Hey everybody, Kurtenbach, Matt Schneidman. We're in Miami still. Matt's been in Florida
I've been here for a week.
You go to Buffalo and you think, oh, Florida will sound great.
Oh boy.
No.
I gotta get out of here.
Get on a flight in like a couple of hours, but first we gotta talk about whatever the hell that was. Raiders win, keep their season alive. Everything that they had, everything that they wanted this season is somehow still in front of this team, but I don't know if you would call that game anything to build off of.
No, I think obviously the Raiders are going to take it for what it is, and that's a win, and that's a much-needed win. I know it's only Week 9, but that's about as much of a must-win as a Week 9 game can be.
Yeah, they shouldn't be must-win in Week 9, but that was a must-win game.
That was a must-win because if they lose, they go to 3-6 with the lead in their division at 6-3. You got a gauntlet of a schedule coming up with the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Eagles.
All three of your division teams as well.
Exactly.
And the Giants team with Davis Webb. You can't rule them out.
Exactly. But they jumped from 14th to 9th. The AFC is totally jumbled. Who knows what can happen in this league. The Patriots have shown some vulnerabilities. I'm not saying they're going to intercept Tom Brady. They probably couldn't intercept me right now.
It's true.
But it's a much-needed win, 4-5. And the difference, especially with a bye week coming up, going into a bye week, any bye week, with a win instead of a loss is huge, especially at this juncture for Oakland.
Especially considering you mentioned the really tough schedule and just where they're at. It's a big jumble in the middle of the AFC. So the Raiders are still somehow in the middle of this playoff picture. You said they just jumped over 5 teams today with this win, including Miami, who they now have a tiebreaker over, though I don't think that Miami's going to factor in at the end of this thing. This is a dysfunctional team. As I wrote in my column today, I think the Raiders were the second worst of 2 bad teams today. That gets you a win sometimes in the NFL. But that Patriots game coming up in Mexico City on November 19th, every game from now on is in must-win mode. The Raiders really probably only have the opportunity to lose one more game, and you mentioned that tough schedule. So I'm interested to see how they build off of this. Derek Carr mentioned after the game that he felt like the practices were a lot better this week. We can argue why it took them 8 weeks to figure out how to practice, why it took them 8 weeks to figure out that like Jared Cook creates mismatches, why it took them 8 weeks to realize that they have to commit to the run game even if it's not working at the start. But they figured it out. And you don't get style points in the standings. They got the win. They're where they need to be. I have no idea if they play the game that they played tonight, playoffs are impossible. They're going to get smoked in the second half of the season. But if they take sort of the commitment and I thought sort of the energy that they had tonight, where they were trying to give the game back at several points, and they come through and they win it with a pretty competent drive at the end. If they take that sort of mentality, if that's something they can build on, well, then maybe this second half, it's all that potential that we talked about in the preseason. Maybe it will finally come out here. But that Mexico City game, we were trying to get out of it. We were trying to figure out how maybe we skip it. Who knows?
Oh, I'm not.
You're not. You're going everywhere.
You
spent a week with the team in Florida, but we were trying to figure out what it would mean. Obviously, a game everyone circled on their calendars earlier in the year, and it's like, well, it's right back on. It's crazy.
I think so, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how Marshawn Lynch moves forward from this game. He only had 2 touchdowns through the first 8 weeks. I know that was only 7 games for him. Only 57 yards today. His season high is still 76. Not great, but the difference for him, he got in the end zone. A 22-yard run. That was his longest run of the season by 7 yards, I believe it was. Then he punched one in down here. Both scores put the Raiders up double digits, and those were their 2 biggest leads since Week 2 against the Jets at the final buzzer. So I know Marshawn Lynch wasn't the Marshawn Lynch of old, meaning, he's reeling off these 90, 100-yard games and knocking people over and knocking people into another dimension. But his touchdown runs were some of the biggest plays. Excuse me, this humidity.
It's crazy.
Some of the biggest plays this offense had.
By now.
No, some of the biggest plays this offense has had. And, Derek Carr was saying, he's back and he's joking more with us and everything. But Marshawn Lynch on the field, he doesn't have to rush for 100 yards in a game.
Not in this
because
offense.
He's not going to. Exactly, not in this offense. Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington take a little bit of the load off. That's fine for the Raiders. They're not going to ask for 80, 90 yards a game from Lynch. If they can get, a bruising run down near the goal line, as we saw today, get in for a score, a 22-yard run up the gut, juke a safety out is an added bonus.
I thought today was the first game that the Raiders figured out, maybe since that first game against Tennessee, that the Raiders figured out how to use Marshawn Lynch in this offense. It's obviously been an issue. I don't think to any fault of Marshawn, but the Raiders switched up their blocking scheme a bit to accommodate Marshawn. They have 2 third down backs that really play a significantly different style. You're in an offense that likes to it's a spread offense. I mean, we got to call it what it is. And having a power back in that spread offense and a zone scheme and a power scheme, they didn't know what they were doing. Today, it helps playing a bad team, don't get me wrong, but today they figured out the right balance, which is use Marshawn to wear down an opposing defense, and you really saw that on that final drive. Now, we do have to talk about the Raiders' defense, which the scoreboard does not indicate how skittish. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, Jay Cutler playing on 2 broken ribs.
Yeah.
2 broken ribs. He didn't play last week against the Ravens, and the Dolphins lost 40-0. Jay Cutler threw for over 300 yards, completed over 30 passes, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He looked like an all-pro quarterback out there, and as you were saying, the Raiders were just the better of 2 bad teams tonight. I know the Dolphins could potentially be in the playoff picture, but if the Raiders are letting up over 300 yards to a Jay Cutler on 2 broken ribs, the thing is, the Raiders only had 1 sack, and it wasn't until late in the game. You think obviously there's more strategy behind it, but they rarely even pressured him. Jay Cutler rarely had to scramble out of the pocket or move around in the pocket. Only 1 sack on a guy with 2 broken ribs, and we thought Khalil Mack was going to have a field day. He's still sitting at 4.5 sacks after last week's no-show against Buffalo.
Right.
But Cutler went off today, and lucky for the Raiders, the Dolphins' offensive line, which held up in the passing game. Aside from one 42-yard run by Kenyon Drake, as we know, the Dolphins traded their starting running back earlier this week. Raiders are lucky that the Dolphins don't have much of a run game, because if they did, then the Raiders would be heading into the bye 3-6.
Yeah, and it would all be over in that situation. The thing that's struck me most about the defense, it wasn't just that Jay Cutler was tearing them apart. He was making short passes into massive swaths of land. I mean, like, it looked like a Texas Tech 5-wide thing, and they weren't running that kind of a set. The Raiders secondary has all sorts of problems. We still have no idea what's going on with Gary and Conley, but this team could really use them. Obi Melifonwu, I didn't feel like was a factor at all. He seemed more of like a no, but he didn't make an immediate impact. And again, that's not really his role. But just up and down play from this defense again, and the book has been out on them for, I'd say, over a year now. Double or triple or quadruple team Mac. Do whatever you have to do for somebody else to make a play on this Raiders defense. And Bruce Irvin has yet to make a play. I mean, I know that he might have stripped a fumble. It was a massive humanity in there. Bruce Irvin hasn't made a play. I don't think anyone else on the defensive line has made a play, and I just don't know who else you can even call on at this juncture, because every option to this point has failed. The Raiders secondary just has to find a way. If I knew how, I would be making a lot more money than I am now.
I don't think anyone knows how. The Chiefs game too, and this game, the Raiders defensive line didn't do anything, but then in the Chiefs game, you have Danico Autry and Mack coming up with that big 3rd down sack on Alex Smith. And then it was Irvin and Mario Edwards who took down Cutler here late. Mario Edwards, he's healthy now. He's playing better.
Yeah, he's been
still not up to his potential, but I definitely hear what you're saying.
This isn't going to work against the Patriots.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know how Tom Brady, you think Jay Cutler's tearing him up. What the hell's Tom Brady going to do to this team?
I don't want to know.
And Derek Carr, I mean, listen, they played well. They did enough to win. That's nowhere near where we think Derek Carr can be. You see these flashes where think Derek Carr can be the best quarterback in the NFL with all of this talent, with all of these weapons around him, and then you just see interceptable passes, kind of bonehead dink and dunk play, trying to get it out way too fast, throwing it to the line of scrimmage on 3rd down. It's just still so Jekyll and Hyde on this offense and this defense. I think we know exactly what they are now. It's nice to be in the position to be in the playoff hunt and have everything in front of you, but this team needs to make major strides, and this is going to be an interesting test. I think that going into this game, we all knew that Jack Del Rio was going to face some real heat if they lost it, considering the expectations of this team and what would have transpired had they lost, meaning the season would be over. We're now absolutely going to get a great case study in Jack Del Rio's ability to coach this team. How does he take the positives, correct the negatives, and then go and play arguably the best team in the NFL on the road in a home game.
I would say the Eagles are not by far and away, but I think the Eagles are the best team, which the Raiders get Monday night on Christmas, so that'll be a good Christmas gift.
It will certainly be something. It could have been over tonight. It's not. Take the positives. Hopefully correct the negatives.
On to New England, New England, as Bill Belichick would say.
And on to Mexico City, the home road game, one of them this year. Yep. This is a lovely new venue, by the way. I'm very excited for the Super Bowl in 2020.
Yeah.
Here, but,
maybe the Raiders will be there.
One final thought, Matt, from you on tonight's game. What's the one thing that you got to get out before we go take a nice long vacation for a day?
I think, and this might be off the beaten path, but I think Sean Smith played a decent game tonight. You know, Dexter McDonald was the guy who wasn't very good tonight. TJ Carey got beaten a couple times, left his man in space, but Sean Smith has been the guy who Raider fans and us media have pinpointed as the weak link of this secondary. He was fun. You know, Garyon Conley, I don't think he's going to play again this season. We're going to get an official ruling on him. Del Rio said after the bye week they'll make a decision whether to put him on IR or not. I don't think you see him. He hasn't even practiced the last 2 weeks. But if that secondary is going to be paper thin, you need anyone who's played very poorly to step up. And even though the guys who have played better than Sean Smith this season didn't play as well, Smith took a step in the right direction today. You know, he's matched up against Jarvis Landry's, Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker, guys who have so much more speed than him, and he held his own. So if there's one kind of positive to take away from this secondary, I think it's the play of Sean Smith, especially since the guys around him didn't play as well as they have.
Thing that I thought really stood out tonight, I thought the offensive line brought it with a little bit of nastiness. They were going up against Ndamukong Suh, who got his. He had a couple of incredible plays. He's a world beater. He's perhaps the best in the game to do it. We can have that argument a different day. And that's a good Dolphins defensive line, and I thought they were bringing it, and I thought the Raiders offensive line, with everything that's been thrown at them and with all of their up and down play, I thought they really they won the line of scrimmage a lot tonight, and that's so necessary given everything that's going on with this Raiders team, especially when they had to win the line of scrimmage. I thought the Raiders offensive line had a nice bounce back game.
Marshall Newhouse even tried to score a touchdown today.
That was probably the low light. Not only did he give up the sack, then he tried to redeem himself. Poor guy. He'll be on the blooper reel forever. It was the highlight of the game.
He'll be on Come On Man on Monday night.
So, but I did think that they had a pretty good game, and again, they're going to need that week in and week out. A lot of things to correct from this Raiders team, but they got the one thing they needed. They had to win. They did win. It might not have been pretty, but they lived to see another week. And whenever that happens, it feels like it's going to be forever from now, but it'll be upon us sooner than we think. And we'll be there.
And hopefully we'll live to see another week. We've got a flight back tomorrow, but we'll catch you guys later.
Thanks,
Stay
guys.
up to date into the bye week.